Could you believe it? Have you ever felt like the whole world stopped spinning for a moment? Remember that shocking notification on your phone that made you gasp? Number 11. Princess Diana. The world stood still on August 31st, 1997. A car crash in Paris. A tunnel named Pont de l'Alma. Princess Diana, only 36 years old, gone forever. The People's Princess, as she was affectionately known, left behind two young princes and millions of heartbroken admirers across the globe. Diana's death triggered an unprecedented wave of public mourning. Outside Kensington Palace, mourners created a sea of flowers that stretched as far as the eye could see. An estimated 2.5 billion people worldwide watched her funeral on television, one of the most watched events in history. The streets of London filled with sobbing strangers who felt like they'd lost someone they personally knew. What made Diana's death so universally devastating wasn't just her royal status. It was her humanizing touch, the way she held AIDS patients' hands when others wouldn't, her campaign against landmines, her struggles with bulimia and depression that she openly discussed. Diana connected with people because she seemed real, vulnerable, and genuinely compassionate in a world of stiff royal protocols. Her legacy lives on through charitable foundations and through her sons, William and Harry, who continue her humanitarian work. Even those born years after her death know her story, the fairy tale wedding that wasn't really a fairy tale, her dedication to humanitarian causes, and the tragic end that came far too soon. Number 10. Michael Jackson, June 25, 2009. The King of Pop takes his final bow at just 50 years old. Michael Jackson's sudden death from cardiac arrest, later determined to be caused by a propofol overdose administered by his personal physician, sent shockwaves around the planet. From Tokyo to Tehran, Rio to Russia, fans gathered in spontaneous vigils, dancing to Thriller and Billie Jean, creating makeshift memorials with candles, flowers, and handwritten notes. His memorial service at the Staples Center in Los Angeles became a global event, with an estimated 1 billion people watching worldwide. What made Jackson's death so profoundly felt across cultural and geographical boundaries? His music had served as the soundtrack for multiple generations. The moonwalk wasn't just a dance move, it was a cultural phenomenon that transcended language barriers. Jackson had broken racial barriers on MTV, transformed music videos into art forms, and created albums like Thriller that found their way into homes in every corner of the world. His complicated legacy, the undeniable musical genius alongside controversies and allegations, didn't diminish the collective grief. For many fans, especially those who grew up in the 1980s, Jackson represented childhood memories and nostalgic connection to simpler times. His death marked the end of an era, a final curtain call for an entertainer who had redefined what it meant to be a global superstar. Number 9. Whitney Houston, February 11, 2012. A bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. Whitney Houston, the voice that defined a generation, silenced forever at 48. The news broke on the eve of the Grammy Awards, turning the music industry's biggest celebration into a somber occasion. Jennifer Hudson's emotional tribute performance of I Will Always Love You left barely a dry eye in the house or among the millions watching at home. Houston's funeral became a who's who of entertainment royalty and was streamed live across the globe. Fans from Newark to Nigeria mourned the loss of that unmatchable voice, the one that hit notes other singers could only dream of reaching. What made Houston's death particularly heartbreaking was the arc of her story. A church choir girl with a God-given talent who soared to unimaginable heights with hits like The Greatest Love of All and I Wanna Dance with Somebody, only to struggle publicly with substance abuse and a tumultuous marriage to Bobby Brown. Her comeback attempts had been closely followed by fans who never stopped believing in her ability to reclaim her former glory. The cruel timing, dying just before the Grammys in the same hotel where a pre-Grammy party was being hosted by her longtime mentor Clive Davis, added an extra layer of tragedy to a death that felt both shocking and, to those who had followed her struggles, sadly inevitable. Number 8. Robin Williams, August 11, 2014. A day when laughter died a little. Robin Williams, the man who had made generations laugh through Mrs. Doubtfire, Janie, and Mork, was found dead by suicide at 63. The details that emerged, his struggle with Lewy body dementia, a progressive brain disorder, only made his death more poignant. This wasn't just a celebrity death, it felt personal to millions who had grown up watching his manic energy and heartfelt performances. Social media platforms were flooded with quotes from his films, clips of his stand-up comedy, and personal stories of how Williams had touched lives. The bench from Good Will Hunting in Boston Public Garden became a spontaneous memorial site, covered in chalk messages quoting his character, "It's not your fault." What made Williams' death resonate so deeply was how it shattered the facade that those who bring the most joy might be battling the darkest demons. His open struggles with addiction had been known, but the depth of his suffering came as a shock. His death sparked crucial conversations about mental health, depression, and suicide that crossed national boundaries. From Dead Poets Society to Aladdin, Williams had created characters that taught life lessons with humor and heart. "Oh Captain, My Captain" trended worldwide as fans paid tribute to a man whose gift was making others happy, even when he couldn't do the same for himself. Number 7. Prince, April 21, 2016. Paisley Park, Minnesota. The artist formerly known as and once again known as Prince was found unresponsive in an elevator. At 57, the musical genius had left the building. Buildings and landmarks around the world lit up in purple, from the Eiffel Tower to the New Orleans Superdome. Impromptu dance parties broke out in streets from Brooklyn to London as fans blasted Purple Rain and When Doves Cry to celebrate the life of a man who had redefined musical boundaries. Prince's death from an accidental fentanyl overdose revealed the hidden pain behind his electrifying performances. The fiercely private superstar had apparently been suffering from chronic pain for years, a fact few of his adoring fans had known. What made Prince's passing so universally mourned was his uncompromising originality. In a world of manufactured pop stars, Prince played 27 instruments, wrote his own music, fought for artists' rights against record labels, and created a sound that was uniquely, unmistakably his own. From changing his name to an unpronounceable symbol to writing "slave" on his face in protest of industry practices, Prince had always done things his way. The vault of unreleased music he left behind, rumored to contain thousands of songs, offered a bittersweet consolation to fans who would never see another live performance of a musician known for his marathon concerts and mind-blowing guitar solos. Number 6. David Bowie, January 10, 2016. Just 2 days after releasing his final album Black Star on his 69th birthday, the starman returned to the cosmos. The secrecy surrounding his 18-month battle with cancer made the news of David Bowie's death all the more shocking. Few outside his immediate circle knew he was ill. In retrospect, Black Star revealed itself as a carefully crafted farewell, with lyrics and visuals that hinted at mortality and transcendence. From Berlin, where he'd created some of his most influential work, to Brixton, where he was born, fans gathered to sing his songs and celebrate a chameleon who had reinvented himself decade after decade. Memorials popped up outside his New York apartment and at the Aladdin Sane mural in his birth neighborhood. What made Bowie's death affect people across generations and geographies was his status as the ultimate outsider who made being different cool. As Ziggy Stardust, the Thin White Duke, or any of his other personas, Bowie had given permission to the weird, the queer, the misfits to embrace their uniqueness. His gender-bending appearance and performances in the 1970s had opened doors for conversations that were still ongoing decades later. Musicians from Kanye West to Madonna publicly mourned a visionary who had influenced virtually every genre of modern music. His artistic fearlessness, constantly evolving, never settling for formula, had inspired not just musicians but fashion designers, visual artists, and filmmakers worldwide. Number 5. Kobe Bryant, January 26, 2020. A foggy hillside in Calabasas, California, a helicopter crash. Basketball legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and 7 others gone in an instant. The shockwaves reverberated far beyond basketball courts. NBA games scheduled that day became impromptu memorials, with teams taking 24-second violations or 8-second backcourt violations to honor Bryant's jersey numbers. Players openly wept on benches. Fans gathered outside the Staples Center in Los Angeles, leaving jerseys, basketballs, and handwritten notes. What made Bryant's death particularly devastating was its unexpectedness and the presence of children among the victims. At 41, Bryant was in his post-NBA career renaissance, winning an Oscar for his animated short Dear Basketball, mentoring young players and coaching Gianna's team. The father-daughter relationship cut short added an extra dimension of tragedy that transcended sports. From China, where Bryant was enormously popular, to Italy, where he had spent part of his childhood, the mourning went global. Even those who weren't basketball fans knew the name Kobe Bryant and his famous Mamba mentality, the relentless work ethic and competitive drive that had made him a 5-time NBA champion. The phrase "girl dad" trended worldwide as fathers shared photos with their daughters, inspired by Bryant's proud embracing of the role as a father to 4 girls. His death became not just about the loss of an athletic icon, but about the fragility of life and the preciousness of family connections. Number 4. Chadwick Boseman, August 28, 2020. The Black Panther, silently battling colon cancer for 4 years while filming some of his most physically demanding roles, finally rested at age 43. The world reacted with stunned disbelief. There had been no public disclosure of his illness. While fans had noticed his weight loss, few suspected the truth that Boseman had been undergoing surgeries and chemotherapy between filming sessions for Black Panther, Da 5 Bloods, and other projects. The Wakanda Forever crossed arms salute became a global symbol of respect and mourning. Black children who had finally seen themselves represented as a superhero on screen lost their hero. Adults who had celebrated the cultural milestone that was Black Panther mourned not just an actor but what he represented. What made Boseman's death strike such a chord globally was the dignity and purpose with which he'd lived his final years. Rather than stepping back from work to focus solely on treatment, he had chosen to create art that would outlive him and visit children with cancer while privately fighting the same disease himself. His portrayal of real-life figures like Jackie Robinson, James Brown, and Thurgood Marshall had already established him as an actor who brought historical icons to life with nuance and respect. But it was T'Challa, the king of fictional Wakanda, that had elevated him to worldwide recognition and made his loss feel personal to millions who had never met him but felt his impact profoundly. Number 3. Queen Elizabeth II, September 8, 2022. Balmoral Castle, Scotland. After 70 years on the throne, the longest reign in British history, Queen Elizabeth II passed away at 96. For most people alive, she was the only British monarch they had ever known. Her constant presence through wars, social revolutions, technological transformations, and global pandemics had made her seem almost immortal. The announcement of her death triggered Operation London Bridge, the meticulously planned protocol for this inevitable but somehow still surprising event. The queue to view her coffin laid in state stretched for miles along the Thames, with people waiting up to 24 hours to pay their respects. Worldwide flags flew at half-mast. Commonwealth nations from Canada to Australia held memorial services. Even countries with complicated relationships with British colonial history acknowledged the end of a remarkable era. What made Elizabeth II's death such a moment of global unity was her unique position in contemporary history. She had met 13 U.S. presidents and countless world leaders. She had evolved from a young queen who represented the last vestiges of empire to an elder stateswoman who oversaw the transition to a modern monarchy in changing times. Her famous reserve, the stoicism that rarely allowed public displays of emotion, made her occasional moments of visible feeling all the more powerful. From her Annus Horribilis speech to her addresses during the COVID-19 pandemic, Elizabeth had provided stability during uncertain times. Her passing marked not just the death of a person, but symbolized the end of a certain kind of constancy in a rapidly changing world. Number 2, Freddie Mercury, November 24, 1991. Just one day after publicly confirming he had AIDS, the voice of Queen was silenced forever. Freddie Mercury, 45, left behind a musical legacy that would only grow more influential with time. His death came at a time when AIDS was still heavily stigmatized. Mercury had kept his diagnosis private, only confirming his illness hours before his death. The timings during the height of the AIDS epidemic made his passing not just a musical loss, but part of a larger tragedy affecting the gay community worldwide. What made Mercury's death unite fans globally was the universal language of his music. Bohemian Rhapsody, We Will Rock You, and We Are the Champions had become anthems that transcended borders, languages, and generations. His 4-octave vocal range and flamboyant stage presence had redefined what a frontman could be. The 1992 Freddie Mercury tribute concert at Wembley Stadium featured artists from David Bowie to Elton John to Metallica, demonstrating how Mercury's influence crossed genre boundaries. The event raised awareness and funds for AIDS research, giving purpose to the pain of his loss. Perhaps most remarkably, Mercury's star has only risen since his death. The 2018 biopic Bohemian Rhapsody introduced him to new generations. Queen songs remain fixtures at sporting events worldwide. His performances, particularly the band's 1985 Live Aid set, are still studied by performers seeking to understand the alchemy of perfect crowd connection. Number 1, John Lennon, December 8, 1980. Outside the Dakota apartment building in New York City. 4 shots fired by Mark David Chapman. John Lennon, 40 years old, murdered just weeks after releasing his comeback album, Double Fantasy. The news spread in the pre-internet era through radio and television announcements that interrupted regular programming. Hundreds, then thousands gathered in Central Park across from where Lennon had died. Impromptu vigils formed in Liverpool, London, Tokyo, and cities worldwide as fans struggled to process the shocking assassination of a musical visionary. What made Lennon's death particularly devastating was its senselessness and the lost potential. After a 5-year hiatus to focus on raising his son Sean, Lennon had just returned to music making. The man who had written Imagine and Give Peace a Chance had been silenced by an act of violence, a cruel irony not lost on his millions of fans. The impact crossed generational lines. For those who had screamed at Beatles concerts in the 1960s, a piece of their youth died that December night. For younger fans who had discovered the Beatles later or followed Lennon's solo career, the loss represented the end of possibility. No Beatles reunion would ever be possible. No new Lennon insights into a changing world would come. On the Sunday following his death, fans around the world observed 10 minutes of silence at 2 p.m. EST. Radio stations in New York stopped playing music during this time. The moment of collective silence demonstrated how one artist's voice had connected people across continents and cultures. Do celebrity deaths affect us so deeply because they remind us of our own mortality? Or is it because we form one-sided relationships with these public figures who enter our living rooms, car speakers, and now our phone screens? When millions share the same grief simultaneously, does it create a rare moment of human connection in an increasingly divided world?